Hi, I'm here to rank some of the characters of X-Men Evolution. And X-Men is a franchise that has a lot of characters, and each of the X-Men shows have plenty of characters. I'm here to focus on some of the characters that have big roles in the show and leave a big impact. 15 characters, and I could have easily included more, but didn't want things to get too much. And X-Men Evolution is a really good show, and even the characters that are lower ranked aren't bad in my opinion. Some of the lower ranked characters I feel like didn't get as much to do as I think they should have, and some of them I'm just not the biggest fan of how they're presented, but none of them are awful. And something important to know about this ranking is that my ranking is based off of specifically what these characters are like in X-Men Evolution. If this were for the movies, there's a lot of characters that would be lower, and there's characters that would be much higher. Number 15 for me is Shadowcat, and it's not because she's that awful of a character. She just never really did anything that really stood out to me, and I want to become a fan of Kitty Pryde. Just in the adaptations that I've seen, she's never really left a huge impact on me. And even though she gets some stuff to do in X Men Evolution, there's not much that really has left a huge impact. So unfortunately, she is in last place. Number 14 is Beast, and Beast is a good character. I do enjoy him. He just doesn't get a lot to do in this show, and what he gets to do it is decent. There's just not a whole lot of him in the show. Number 13 is Storm, and Storm is a cool character. What's really holding her back in the ranking is just that she doesn't get much to do in the show. And Storm not getting that much to do, that's also a problem in the movies. And I really would love to put Storm higher on the list, but sadly, she didn't get to leave as big of an impact as I think she deserved to. Number 12 is Spike. And I think that Spike is a pretty cool character and has a fun personality and adds some good stuff to the show. Doesn't stand out to me as much as some other characters, but I think he has a solid role in the show. Number 11 is Nightcrawler, and Nightcrawler provides some enjoyment to the show, and there is some good emotional stuff involving him and a few other characters, notably some stuff involving him and Rogue. So, Nightcrawler is a well handled character in the show when it comes to stuff involving his family. I like that. 10 is Avalanche, and I think that he is a cool character, and he had more humanity and compassion than I was expecting him to have, although he certainly makes a lot of mistakes and he does some bad stuff. But there's some interesting stuff involving him, so I think he's a well done antagonist that can actually be likable at times. There's certainly times where he does some unlikable stuff, but there's some good stuff to him. 9 is Scarlet Witch, who doesn't have the biggest role in the show, but there's a lot of interesting drama involving her and her past involving other characters. So she's a well handled antagonist, and I like what she brings to the show. Now, number 8 is a character that would be much higher if I were talking about the films and the franchise in general. Number 8 is Professor X. I am a huge fan of the character Professor X. He is definitely one of my favorite characters from Marvel. He's a very inspirational character that means a lot to me. And a lot of that comes from the films. In X Men Evolution, he does have a good role. He's a good mentor character. Why he's not super high on the ranking is because he doesn't get a lot of the great inspirational moments that he has in the films. He doesn't get as much to do as he does in the films, but he's definitely still a good character. Number 7 is Wolverine, who doesn't get as much to do as he does in the films, and that does hold Wolverine back a bit in the ranking. Do think it does help the show because even though I really like Wolverine, I think he often gets more to do than he should. And I think Wolverine has a really good role in the show where he can have a lot to do sometimes, but it's definitely not his show. And I think he's a really good supporting character in a lot of episodes. Number six is a character that could seem pretty high on the list, and that's Toad. But I really like Toad in the show. I think he's the funniest character, and he provides a lot of enjoyment to the show. And I think he really brings a lot of happiness to me. So I really like Toad in the show, and I can understand if that's too high for him, but I like him personally enough, and this is just my personal ranking. Number five is Jean Grey, and I think she's really good in the show. I think that um, she's able to have a really big role, and a lot of stuff is explored about her character. She has a lot of personality, and Jean Grey sometimes doesn't get enough to do in some adaptations, but that's not a problem for this show, and I appreciate that. And speaking of sort of that similar thing of a character getting enough to do, number four is Cyclops. Cyclops actually has a huge role in the show, and the show actually does a really good job of giving him a lot to do, showing what a good leader he can be, what a kind person he can be, how heroic he can be. A lot of the things that, even though I love the movies, they did not do for Cyclops. So, uh, Cyclops gets a high ranking on this show because the show actually used him well. At number three is Magneto because Magneto is awesome. I think that Magneto is super intimidating, really cool villain. Uh, Magneto is a consistently awesome character in X-Men adaptations who has a lot of nuance to him while also being very exciting, and there's a lot of really captivating stuff involving him, and that is explored well in X-Men Evolution, so I think he definitely deserved a high ranking. Number two is actually Rogue. X-Men Evolution has my favorite adaptation of Rogue that I've seen, and I do think she has some good stuff in the movies, and it is often a pretty good character, but the Rogue's often not necessarily a character that stands out to me as much as other characters, but in X-Men Evolution, she's one of the most consistently cool and captivating characters in the entire show. And I really like how her personality is done, and she's very consistently interesting, and there's some interesting stuff involving her and Cyclops, and there's some interesting stuff involving her backstory and involving Nightcrawler and stuff involving Mystique, and a lot of stuff is really compelling, and it really helped Rogue be a great character in the show, and easily one of my favorites, and is my favorite hero in the show. And number one is Mystique. Mystique is awesome in this show, and is a great example of how you can have a compelling villain who has some good qualities, but is still definitely a villain. So the stuff involving her, Nightcrawler, and Rogue is really interesting, and Mystique has some moments where she can be sympathetic, but she's still definitely a villain. She has an intimidating presence. She has a very cool presence, and she is the coolest character in the show, and Mystique is just consistently amazing and a delight when she shows up. And Mystique is amazing in the films, and it can be hard to choose a favorite version of Mystique, especially because of how much X-Men Days of Future Past means to me, and Mystique is absolutely amazing in that. So I think it's great to have two definitive versions of Mystique. So Mystique is my favorite character from X-Men Evolution, and you can let me know what you think of my ranking. You can let me know who some of your favorite characters are.